Once upon a time, there was a king who loved his queen more than he loved his kingdom. When she died, he emptied the royal treasury to build a mausoleum for her, shaped like a colossal white rose made of all marble. But his people suffered, and his sons vied for his throne. Soon, his kingdom was bathed in blood because he lost himself to love and grief. The pendant broke in two. "You little fool!" Fakir hissed with more venom in his voice than Duck had ever heard in his darkest moods. As always, she knew, no matter how cutting his words, there was always a shadow of gentleness in his eyes that softened any harshness. She forgot sometimes that the harshness of their beginning. She also known him to be kind-hearted for so long that the very tone of his voice before, directed at her, he had been just as ruthless, this angry, this threatening, when he first told her as Princess Tutu to stay away from Mythos. Duck recoiled back in pain and surprise, but her fingers were still caught in Fakir's unforgiving grip, and she could not retreat one more step. As soon as Fakir felt his heart beating, memories coursed through him instantly and painfully, and he knew at once what must be happening. Curse Duck and her foolishness! She would undo the gift he had worked so painstakingly to give her. So he did the only thing he could to stop her. Twisted her fingers harshly and snapped the damn rock in two. And so easily had the pendant had broken in two, almost as if the stone itself had wanted to. Wasn't it fitting that the stone was embodied the heart and humanity of the knight who had been torn in two, so itself shattered into two, such little resistance? Half the heart settled within him, turning him into a dark shard of glass. Bitterness sank into him, but with it came determination, resolution, and a ruthlessness self-control. He closed his eyes, trying to overcome the pain. After all, wasn't turning Duck human exactly what he had set out to do in the first place? Duck's numb fingers tightened around the top half of the now broken teardrop. Its color intensified into a burning red, so brilliant it was almost too beautiful to look at. A red that almost burned gold in its brightness and beauty. She stared uncomprehendingly at the shard still in her hand, a look of horror coming over her face as the last of the entirety of the situation sank in. "Oh no!" she gasped. "What have we done?" She knew how terrible an incomplete heart could be. What would happen to Fakir? Would he become a shadow of himself now, the way Mythos had been without his heart intact? Was the damage irreversible? No matter how many times she cried out his name, he did not open his eyes. Still clutching at the remaining heart shard, Duck grabbed Fakir by his midnight blue velvet-clad shoulders and shook desperately. "Fakir! Fakir! Fakir! I broke your heart! I'm so sorry, you king!" Any other time, the sheer absurdity of her words would have elicited a response from him. But he did not even seem to be aware of her presence anymore. He lay so still in his bed of thorns. Oh, by the way, writing advice. You may have heard me complaining earlier about how you shouldn't overdo it with the descriptions of your characters and all that. This is how you do it. When the writing says Duck grabbed Fakir by his midnight blue velvet-clad shoulders, you'll note this is the first time we've had any indication of his clothing. Now I know that in some of the previous scenes, he was wearing a velvet-clad outfit. So now I can free to make the outfit look like anything I want to be. See? Sometimes it helps to add a little bit of imagination to your story. When it seemed that no reply was forthcoming, she hastily let go of one shoulder and tried to press what was left of the pendant back into his chest. But this woke him where everything else had failed. He slapped away her hand, a grimace marring his face, even as his eyes remained closed. At last he opened them and looked up at her worried face. Odd, he thought in a detached sort of way. It should feel good to hear my name on her lips, to see her recognition in my eyes again. Yet, when he searched for that feeling of joy within himself, all he found in its place was emptiness. Even the relief that had begun flaying through Duck on seeing Fakir open his eyes was tinged with concern. For unaccountably, his eyes had grown more gray than green, a still, lifeless color like little chips of crystal that gleamed without any hint of warmth. Both of them seemed to be frozen in tableau, him half sitting up, and one hand encircling her waist loosely, while he knelt by his side, holding onto his shoulder. They stared at each other for a moment that seemed to stretch forever in that dark, timeless place, until at last, with a shrug and look of irritation, he shook off her arms. Doug tried not to be hurt too much. After all, Fakir always behaved like this, and usually it didn't bother her. He would always prickle like a burr hiding in something too fragile to be seen, let alone touched. Her emotions were concerned, but the blessed expression of embarrassment that would usually soften such a rejection were missing from his face during this time. At last she ventured, in a slightly hesitant voice, "Let me return the rest of your heart to you, Fakir." The gentleness of her voice, and the shadows of her concern in her soft blue eyes, made the jumble of emotions in his chest sit uneasily. His resolve to return her memories and her humanity, his anger and pain at the trick hand of fate played against him, his icy blue discipline, all shifted as if trying to find some unnameable, inescapable thing that seemed to be missing. He brushed aside the unease. "Are you a complete idiot? What do you think was the point of all this?" he continued, gesturing vaguely at the broken pendant still in Doug's hand. "If it wasn't to turn you human again." Of course, there was nothing that set Doug's anger off more than Fakir's arrogance and smarter-than-thou attitude. What made it worse was that he seemed entirely earnest this time. There wasn't the usual hint of teasing or consideration in his voice. She found herself repeating the pained thoughts that she had earlier as she wandered through the subterranean maze to find him. But this time in anger and exasperation. "Do you care about that?" "Well, obviously I do," he snapped back. But even as he answered her, Fakir realized that the words weren't true. No, he actually did care about anything, really, except for making certain his initial plans were carried out. As to the nature of those plans, they seemed to be a thing wholly unrelated and uninteresting to him. He was emotionally detached from the concept of having her become human once more, even as he was mentally dedicated to the idea more than anything else. The wanting, he realized, was absent. "I'll take out my heart again, and—" Now it was Duck's turn to be entirely scathing. She couldn't believe, after all she had gone through to find him, all the terror the tree's words had caused her, that Fakir could even consider possibly a thing. "Are you crazy? The tree said you were dying! Do you think I'm going to stand here and let you do that to yourself again?" She did not think she could bear to see him once more turned into that hollow, lifeless statue she had first seen. "So what then? Do you think I'll take back the rest of my heart so you could go back to being a duck?" He did not know why he rejected the idea, except it was the one thing he's certain he would not be able to bear, especially if he had the rest of his heart with him. Duck opened her mouth to protest. Just as the truth of his words struck her. Either she would lose her humanity and her memories and be absent, or he would lose his consciousness and existence and be absent. That regardless, whatever course was dropped, Fakir's promise to stay by her side could never be kept. "It's selfish of you," he continued ruthlessly, eyes glittering coldly, demanding she bow to his will, "to give me back the rest of my heart so you could feel better about yourself. Always playing the martyr. Would you have me go back to the world so I could be alone?" Duck felt herself entirely undone, because he was so terribly, completely right. She hadn't been thinking of him at all, had she? Suddenly all her memories of Fakir came to mind. How in recent weeks, months even, he always seemed so sad and lonely, and she had felt helpless in her inability to help him. "But I can't just let you give away your life, Fakir!" Duck choked down in Ango's voice. "Is there any other way?" Duck found herself staring at the pendant once more, blinking back tears, as she had heard him continue a little less harshly. That since neither of them was willing to give in, there was no other choice but to continue with the things the way they were. "At least," he concluded in a callous, sarcastic tone, "we can both be human." He pried the broken pendant from her fingers, lifted the tarnished silver chain over her head. As the now red stone settled in place against her collarbone once more, Duck felt its remorseless, jagged edges.